The blistering sun cast its golden hue over Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, as President Ibrahim Traoré sat by the wide glass window of his modest but symbolic office. Despite being the youngest head of state in Africa, Ibrahim carried the weight of a continent's expectations. His days were often filled with meetings about food sovereignty, security reforms, and removing colonial influence, but today would be different. His assistant, Jean-Baptiste, walked in holding a beige-colored envelope, slightly crumpled and marked with international postage. That was already unusual. Most of the communication came digitally these days. But this was a letter. Mr. President, Jean-Baptiste said respectfully. This came through diplomatic channels. It's from the United States. Ibrahim looked up, arching an eyebrow. He motioned with a slight wave to bring it over. Jean handed it to him and stepped back. It was handwritten. The envelope simply read, "To Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso. From Benjamin Carter, Tulsa, Oklahoma, United States of America." Ibrahim opened it slowly, intrigued. A handwritten letter from America? He unfolded the paper, revealing a surprisingly neat cursive script. "Dear President Traoré, I hope this letter reaches you. My name is Benjamin Carter. I'm 58 years old, a retired coal miner from Oklahoma, and a proud supporter of President Donald J. Trump. I don't know much about African politics, but I've been reading about you lately. I saw a video online. Somebody posted a clip of you talking about your people, about dignity and standing up to big powers. I don't know why, but it struck me deep. I cried. I really did. I've seen a lot of my countrymen forget what it means to stand up for your people. You reminded me of something we used to be proud of: honor, simplicity, and courage. I ain't rich. I don't have any power. But I want you to know that there's a man in America praying for you, rooting for you. Not because of politics, but because you stand tall. Stay strong, son. Ben Carter. Tulsa, Oklahoma." The room fell silent. Ibrahim stared at the paper for a long time. He read it twice, then a third time, before placing it gently on his desk. Jean-Baptiste, curious but cautious, asked, "Something urgent, Mr. President?" "No," Ibrahim said softly. "Something beautiful." He stood up and walked to the window. Across the courtyard, young cadets were training under the afternoon sun, sweat, discipline, passion. He saw himself in them. And now, in a strange twist, he saw a part of himself in this American man who'd never stepped foot in Africa. A Trump supporter, Ibrahim chuckled. Of all people. He wasn't laughing out of mockery. It was amazement. That a man from a different world, one who stood behind a president often criticized for being divisive, could find unity in a speech made thousands of miles away. That was something rare. Something precious. Ibrahim turned and said to Jean, "Get me the communications team. I want to prepare a message." "A message, sir?" "Yes," he nodded. "For Benjamin Carter. And for the world." 3 days later, the presidential media team had prepared a recorded video, short, simple, and direct. It wasn't a formal address. No flags in the background. No cue cards. Just Ibrahim Traoré, sitting at a wooden desk in his courtyard garden, wearing his olive green fatigues and his usual calm expression. Before the camera rolled, he looked at his team and said, "No edits. No cuts. Let the world see this just as I say it." The red light blinked. They were live. And the president began. "Mr. Benjamin Carter, I received your letter. I read it more times than I can count. In a world where people scream to be heard, you wrote to me quietly. You reached across oceans with kindness and honesty, not as a politician but as a human being. You told me you cried when you saw my words. My brother, I too was moved when I read yours. You called me son. That means something deep in my part of the world. When an elder calls you son, he's not speaking to your title. He's speaking to your soul. I want you to know that I stand tall not just for my country, but for people like you, those forgotten, overlooked, yet filled with wisdom. Thank you, Mr. Carter. From the heart of Africa to the heart of America. I see you." The camera went off. No applause, just silence. The video was uploaded within the hour to Ibrahim's official page and across Burkina Faso's media platforms. But it didn't stop there. Something about the rawness, the sincerity, the human tone. It struck a chord. The clip went viral. American social media lit up. Burkina Faso president responds to Trump supporter with more grace than our own leaders. Traoré just did what no politician has done in years. Spoke to the heart. It wasn't long before mainstream U.S. media picked it up. CNN aired a segment titled, "From Tulsa to Ouagadougou, a Message of Unity." Fox News titled, "There's Trump supporter writes to African leader." His response? Stunning. Benjamin Carter had no idea what was happening until his granddaughter showed him the video on her iPad during Sunday dinner. "Grandpa, he's talking about you." Ben stared at the screen, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. That's him. He really read it. He stood up slowly, walked to his little garage-turned-woodshop, and sat alone with his thoughts. The whole thing was surreal. He never expected a response. Not from a president. Not from Africa. Not from anywhere. He looked at the faded American flag above his workbench. And then, with trembling hands, he reached for an old notebook and began to write again. "Dear Mr. President Traoré, you don't know what you've done. You spoke to me like a real man, like someone who understands what it's like to carry a burden. I don't cry much anymore, but you made me cry again, and this time it felt like a healing kind of cry. My buddies down at the cafe, we watched your video. All of us sat there silent after. One of them said, 'Why can't our own politicians speak like that?' And I said, 'Because they forgot how to listen.' You didn't. You listened. And for that, I thank you. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'll be telling my grandchildren this story till the day I die. God bless you, young man, and may God protect your people." The letter was sent, but the story had already taken on a life of its own. People from Atlanta to Alaska began sending messages of support to Burkina Faso's embassy in D.C. One U.S. veteran wrote, "Traoré reminds me of the leaders we used to have: duty, honor, country." Back in Ouagadougou, Ibrahim sat reading The Ripple Effect. He was quiet, thoughtful. "Sometimes," he said to Jean-Baptiste, "it only takes one honest voice to remind us that humanity is still alive." The buzz in Washington was electric. Within days of the viral video, congressional offices began receiving calls from curious and inspired constituents. Some were asking, "Can we learn more about Burkina Faso?" Others were saying that young president, he speaks with more decency than our own. Even President Donald J. Trump, now deep into his second term and as polarizing as ever, was briefed about the viral exchange during a White House media debriefing. Trump, watching the clip of Traoré's video, leaned back in his leather chair and said to his press secretary, "This kid, he gets it. He gets people." That same day, at a MAGA rally in Missouri, Trump made a surprise mention. "Have you seen this guy in Africa, Traoré? President of Burkina Faso." A Trump supporter wrote him a letter, and this guy sends back a message like he's writing to a brother. Strong man. Smart man. Real leadership. We respect that, don't we? The crowd roared. Back in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim was stunned when told about Trump's shout-out. He wasn't flattered or boastful. If anything, it humbled him. Because all this wasn't about gaining attention, it was about something much deeper, human connection. And then came the unexpected phone call. The U.S. ambassador to Burkina Faso requested a meeting on behalf of the White House. The president agreed. Within 48 hours, a secure video link was established between the presidential palace in Ouagadougou and a private conference room in the West Wing. A senior U.S. delegation appeared on screen, smiling. "Ibrahim," began Secretary of State Marla Jenkins, "President Trump asked us to tell you that he was genuinely touched by your response to Mr. Carter. He believes moments like this build bridges stronger than trade deals or defense agreements." Ibrahim smiled modestly. "I thank him. And I thank Mr. Carter. That letter did more than touch me, it reminded me why I serve." Jenkins continued, "President Trump would like to extend an invitation. An informal visit to Washington. No suits. No ceremonies. Just a fireside conversation between two presidents." Ibrahim's eyes widened, but he kept his composure. "I am honored. But I will only come if I can also visit Tulsa." "Why Tulsa?" Jenkins asked. "To meet the man who started this." The following week, news outlets exploded. Traoré to visit U.S., plans to meet Trump, and Tulsa miner who wrote him a letter. From Africa to America, a story that's shaking the world's perception of politics. Benjamin Carter, meanwhile, was in disbelief. The White House had already contacted him, offering a private escort to attend a special meeting in D.C. But when they told him President Traoré also wanted to come to his home in Tulsa, Ben choked up. I never thought a president would want to visit me," he told a local reporter. Preparations began. The Carter family scrubbed the house clean, neighbors mowed their lawns, and by the end of the week, even the mayor had issued an official Ibrahim Traoré Day in Tulsa. And then the day arrived. A single jet from Ouagadougou landed at Tulsa International Airport. It wasn't grand. No huge convoy. Just a few security personnel and the young African president stepping out, wearing a simple navy suit and a humble smile. Ben was there in his Sunday best, hat in hand. His granddaughter gripped his arm tightly. The two men approached each other slowly. Then, Ibrahim held out his hand. Ben looked at it, and instead, pulled him into a hug. "Welcome to Tulsa, son." The cameras clicked. Journalists whispered. But in that moment, there was no politics, no race, no nations. Just two men, bound by honor and handwritten words. Ibrahim Traoré sat on Benjamin Carter's wooden porch, sipping sweet iced tea from a mason jar. The late afternoon sun painted Tulsa in a golden hue. No press. No handlers. Just two men, decades apart in age and thousands of miles in background, sharing stories. "You know," Ben said, his voice gravelly but firm, "I never imagined the words of an old miner like me would reach a president." Ibrahim smiled gently. "But it wasn't just your words, Mr. Carter. It was the truth in them. When truth is spoken from the heart, it travels faster than any jet, louder than any speech." They sat in silence for a few moments, the occasional chirp of cicadas filling the air. Then Ben leaned forward and asked something unexpected. "Can I ask you something personal, son?" "Of course. Do you ever get tired of carrying your people?" The question struck Ibrahim in the chest. It wasn't just a question. It was a shared burden. A soldier and a miner, both men who'd shouldered responsibility when no one else would. Ibrahim looked down at the wood-grain patterns on the porch. "Every day," he admitted softly. "But what keeps me going is knowing they never asked me to be perfect. They just want me to be present. To care. That's what I see in your letter. Not anger. Just care. And pain. The kind of pain leaders need to pay attention to." Ben nodded, his eyes misty. "This country of mine, it's hurting. Folks screaming at each other instead of listening. Families broken. And leaders? Most of them forgot what service really means." Ibrahim's gaze was intense now. Maybe this meeting is a message not just for our countries, but to the world. That we don't need to look alike, vote alike, or pray alike to share a conversation of value. The screen door creaked as Ben's granddaughter brought out a tray of pecan pie. "President Traoré," she said sweetly, "would you like a slice?" Ibrahim beamed. "Only if you call me Ibrahim. And only if you'll have a slice with me." The young woman blushed and sat down. Ben chuckled. First time anyone's eaten pecan pie on this porch, and also ran a country. The next morning, Ibrahim visited a local veterans hall where he met with ex-servicemen, shook hands, and listened, not gave speeches, but listened. He asked them about their struggles, their health, their families. One Vietnam vet told him, "I've had more genuine conversation with you in 10 minutes than I've had with DC in 10 years. And then came the official White House visit. No pomp, no press barrage, just a private conversation between President Donald Trump and President Ibrahim Traoré inside the White House library. Trump opened with, "Your speech, that thing was powerful." Ibrahim nodded. "Thank you, Mr. President." But the real speech was Mr. Carter's letter. Trump chuckled. "I get that. Sometimes it takes the people to remind the politicians what leadership is." They talked for over an hour. About Africa's independence, trade partnerships, farming technology, and the role of elders in leadership. Not one insult. Not one partisan jab. Just respect. Before Ibrahim left, Trump leaned in and said, "I hope you know what you've done here, it's more than diplomacy. It's a reminder. For all of us." Outside the White House, Ibrahim met a crowd of about 100 supporters, African students, Americans curious to shake his hand, and a dozen Trump supporters waving both American and Burkinabe flags. One woman shouted, "You're welcome in America anytime, Mr. Traoré." He turned, smiled, and said, "I already feel at home." The plane lifted gently from Tulsa International Airport, but the emotions inside Ibrahim Traoré's heart weighed heavy. As the landscape of Oklahoma receded beneath the clouds, he looked out the window, not just at the fields below, but at the memory of the front porch conversation, the hug from Ben Carter, the look of quiet dignity on the miner's weathered face. Back in Ouagadougou, the return wasn't met with roaring crowds or choreographed celebrations. Instead, it was something deeper, a collective pause, as if the entire country sensed that something transformative had happened. At a press briefing a few days later, Traoré addressed his nation with quiet passion. "I did not go to America to shake hands. I went to listen. I went to learn. I met a man, a miner, not a minister. He reminded me that leadership does not flow from microphones, but from moments of empathy. And I stood beside another president who, despite what people say, showed me that human connection can exist even across oceans of difference. The international press praised the trip as a rare act of soft power diplomacy, but to Ibrahim it was simply the result of a letter that deserved to be heard. And then it was his turn to write back. This time, the letter wasn't to Benjamin Carter alone. It was an open letter to the people of America, published simultaneously in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. To the people of the United States. In the quiet town of Tulsa, Oklahoma, I met a man who changed my view of the world. Mr. Benjamin Carter, a retired miner and a proud supporter of President Trump, took the time to write me a letter that spoke more truth than 1,000 diplomatic cables. He reminded me that every country has its struggles and every citizen, regardless of politics, has a voice that matters. I saw America not through the headlines or policy memos, but through the eyes of its people, its veterans, its daughters, its forgotten workers, and yes, even its proud patriots. I don't see red states or blue states. I see a nation aching for healing. And I offer my hand not as a politician, but as a fellow citizen of this fragile planet to walk with you toward understanding, toward peace, and toward something all of us can believe in again. Human decency. With hope and respect. Ibrahim Traoré, President of Burkina Faso. The response was immediate. Radio hosts wept on air. Conservative talk shows praised Traoré for honoring a Trump supporter while also calling for unity. Liberal commentators were taken aback by the humility and clarity of his message. Letters poured into the Burkina Faso embassy in Washington. Emails flooded Benjamin Carter's inbox. One from a young college student in Vermont read, "Your letter started a wave that the news couldn't ignore. Thank you for writing it. And thank you for reminding us how powerful we can be when we're not yelling." Ben never sought fame, but when asked to appear on a CNN town hall event called Letters That Changed the World, he agreed only if Ibrahim could appear with him virtually from Africa. On live television, the two men shared a screen once more. Ben, now a symbol of heartfelt patriotism. Ibrahim, the president who chose to respond like a human, not a head of state. At the end of the town hall, a young woman stood and asked Ibrahim, "What would you tell Americans who feel divided and hopeless?" He paused, then spoke slowly. "Your divisions may be loud, but your hope is louder. You just have to stop listening to the noise and start listening to each other." 6 months later, a children's literacy fund was established in Burkina Faso named the Carter Traoré Project. Its mission? To promote international pen pal programs between American and African children, fostering cultural exchange and global friendship. Thousands of letters were exchanged in the first year alone. A statue of a miner handing a letter to a young leader was unveiled in Tulsa, commissioned not by a government, but by donations from everyday Americans. Beneath it was etched, "Truth travels faster when it's written with love."